Chapter 17. The Epic of Gilgamesh. Begin all acts and thinking by using El-Kalum the All. Tablet 1, Gilgamesh. 19 times 29 equals 551. Lo! Of him who found out all things, I of him who experienced everything, I shall teach the whole. He searched the lands to teach everywhere. He who experienced the whole gained complete wisdom. He found out what was the secret and uncovered what was hidden. He brought back a tale of times before the flood. He had journeyed far and wide, weary and at last resigned. He engraved all toils on a memorial monument of stone. He had the wall of Uruk built, the sheepfold of holiest Yaa-Nun, the pure treasury. See its wall, which is like a copper band, survey its battlements, which nobody else can match, take the threshold, which is from time immemorial approach Yaa-Nun, the home of Ishtar, which no future ruler nor any man will ever match. Go up onto the wall of Uruk and walk around. Inspect the foundation platform and scrutinize the brickwork. Testify that its brick are baked bricks and that the 7 counselors must have laid its foundations. 1 square mile is city, 1 square mile are orchards, 1 square mile is clay pits, as well as the open ground of Ishtar's temple. 3 square miles and the open ground comprise Uruk. Look for the copper the tablet box, undo its bronze lock, open the door to its secret, lift out the lapis lazuli tablet and read it. The story of that man, Gilgamesh, who went through all kinds of sufferings. He was superior to other rulers, a warrior master of great stature, a hero born of Uruk, a goring wad bull. He marches at the front as leader. He goes behind, the support of his brothers, a strong net, the protection of his men, the raging flood wave, which can destroy even a stone wall. Son of Lugalbanda, Gilgamesh, perfect in strength, son of the lofty cow, the wad cow Ninsen. He is Gilgamesh, perfect in splendor, who opened up passes in the mountains, who could dig pits even in the mountainside, who crossed the ocean, the broad seas, as far as the sunrise, who inspected the edges of the world, kept searching for eternal life, who reached Utnapishtim the far distant, by force, who restored to their rightful place cult centers and temples which the flood had ruined. There is nobody among the rulers of teeming humanity, who can compare with him, who can say I am ruler beside Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was named from birth for fame. 2/3 of him was divine, and 1/3 mortal. Beleti too, who is the mistress of the Anunnaki, who is also known as Ninkur-Sag or Mami, and Ururu designed the shape of his body, made his form perfect, as the Anunnaki. He was proud and noble in Uruk the sheepfold he would walk about, show himself superior. His head held high like a wild bull, he had no rival, and at his puku, his weapons would rise up, his comrades have to rise up. The young men of Uruk became dejected in their private quarters. Gilgamesh would not leave any son alone for his father. Day and shadow hour his behavior changed and was overbearing. He was the shepherd. He was their shepherd also, yet he was powerful, superb, knowledgeable and expert. Gilgamesh would not leave young girls alone, the daughters of warriors, the brides of young men. The Allahum often heard their complaints. The Agigis of heaven and also the ruler of Uruk. Did Aram, who is called Mami, really create such a rampant wild bull? Is there no rival at the Puku? His weapons rise up, his comrades have to rise up. Anu, who is El, often hears their complaints. They called upon the great Ururu, also known as Mami. You, Aram, you created mankind, did you not? Now create someone for him, to match his hunger. The desire of his loins is great and they are the taker of his energies. Let them be regular rivals, and let Uruk be allowed peace. When Ururu heard this, she created inside herself the word control of Anu, the El. Ururu washed her hands, pinched off a piece of clay, and cast it out into open country. She created a primitive man, Enkidu the warrior, offspring of Silence the bullman, sky bolt of Ninurta. His whole body was shaggy with hair. He was furnished with tresses like a woman. His locks of hair grew luxuriant like gram. He knew neither people nor country. He was dressed as cattle are. With gazelles he eats vegetation, with cattle he quenches his thirst at the watering place. With wild beasts he satisfies his need for water. A hunter, a bandit, came face to face with him beside the watering place. He saw him on 3 successive days beside the watering place. The hunter looked at him, and was dumbstruck to see him. In the problem times he went back into his house and was afraid, stayed mute, was silent, and hid the grief in his innermost being. His face was like that of a long-distance traveler. The hunter made his voice heard and spoke. He said to his father, "Father, there was a young man who came from the mountain. On the land he was strong, he was powerful. His strength was very hard, like a sky bolt of Anu. He walks about on the mountain all the time he eats vegetation with cattle, all the time he puts his feet in the water at the watering place. I am too frightened to approach him. He kept filling in the pits that I dug to trap the beast, he kept pulling out the traps that I laid. He kept helping cattle, wild beasts of open country, to escape my grasp. He will not allow me to work in open country. His father spoke to him, to the hunter of Uruk, Gilgamesh. He worked his open country. His strength is very hard, like a sky bolt of An. Go set your face towards Uruk. You have the strength of a man, take control, lead her forth, and make her life the strong man. When he approaches the cattle at the watering place, she must take off her clothes and reveal her attractions. He will see her and go dose to her. Then his cattle, who has grown up in open country with him, will become alien to him. He listened to the advice of his father. The hunter went off to see Gilgamesh. He took the road, set his face towards Uruk, entered the presence of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh spoke to him, to the hunter, go, hunter, lead forth the harlot Shamhat, and when he approaches the cattle at the watering place, she must take off her clothes and reveal her attractions. He will see her and go dose to her. Then his cattle, who has grown up in open country with him, will become alien to him. The hunter, Gilgamesh went, he led forth the harlot Shamhat with him, and they took the road, they made the journey. In 3 days they reached the appointed place. Hunter and harlot sat down in their hiding place for 1 day. Then a second, they sat at the watering place. Then cattle arrived at the watering place, they drank. Then wild beasts arrived at the water, they satisfied their need. And he, Enkidu, whose origin is the mountain, who eats vegetation with gazelles, drinks at the watering place with cattle, satisfied his need for water with wild beasts. Shamhat looked at the primitive man, the murderous youth from the depths of open country. Here he is, Shamhat, bare your bosom, open your legs and let him take in your attractions. Do not pull away, take wind of him. He will see you and come dose to you. Spread open your garments, and let him lie upon you, do for him, the primitive man, as women do. Then his cattle, who has grown up in open country with him, will become alien to him. His love-making he lavished upon her. For 6 days and 7 shadow hours, Enkidu was aroused and poured himself into Shamhat. When he was full with her charms, he set his face towards the open country of his cattle. The gazelles saw Enkidu and scattered, the cattle of the open country kept away from his body. For Enkidu had stripped, his body was too lean. His legs, which used to keep pace with his cattle, were at a standstill. Enkidu had been diminished, he could not run as before. Yet, he had acquired judgment, he had become wiser. He turned back, he sat at the harlot's feet. The harlot was looking at his expression, and he listened attentively to what the harlot said. The harlot spoke to him, to Enkidu, you have become profound Enkidu, you have become like a Baal. Why should you roam open country with wild beasts? Come, let me take you into Uruk, the sheepfold, to the pure house, the dwelling of Anu and Ishtar, where Gilgamesh is perfect in strength, and is like a wild bull, more powerful than any of the people. She spoke to him, and her speech was acceptable. Knowing in his own mind now, he would seek for a friend. Enkidu spoke to her, to the harlot, come, Shamhat, invite me, to the pure house, the holy dwelling of Anu and Ishtar, where Gilgamesh is perfect in strength and is like a wild bull, more powerful than any of the people. Let me challenge him, and I will win in Uruk. I shall be the strongest, I shall go in and alter destiny, one who was born in open country has superior wisdom and strength. Shamhat answered, come on, let us go forth and let me please you this way, for you can be pleased in many ways, for there are, I know. Go, Enkidu, into Uruk the sheepfold. Where young men are girded with sashes and every day is a feast day, where the drums are beaten. And girls are willing to show off their figures, adorned with joy and full of happiness. In bed at shadow hour, great men enjoy them, O Enkidu. You know nothing of life. Let me show you Gilgamesh, a man of joy and woe. Look at him, observe his face, he is beautiful in manhood, dignified, his whole body is charged with seductive charm. He is more powerful in strength of arms than you. He does not sleep by day or shadow hour. O Enkidu, change your plan for punishing him. Shamash loves Gilgamesh, and Anu, and Lil and Enki made him wise. Before you came from the mountains, Gilgamesh was dreaming about you in Uruk. Gilgamesh arose and described a dream. He told it to his mother, Mother, I saw a dream in the shadow hour. There were stars in the sky for me. And something like a sky bolt of Anu kept falling upon me, and I tried to lift it up, but it was too heavy for me. I tried to turn it over, but I couldn't budge it. The countrymen of Uruk were standing over it. The countrymen had gathered over it, the men crowded over it, the young men massed over it, they kissed its feet like very young children. I love it as a wife, doted on it, I carried it, laid it at your feet, you treated it as equal tone. The wise mother of Gilgamesh, all-knowing overstood, she spoke to her ruler. The wise Ninsen all-knowing overstood, she spoke to Gilgamesh, when there were stars in the sky for you, and something like a sky bolt of Anu kept falling upon you, you tried to lift it up, but it was too heavy for you, you tried to turn it over, but you couldn't budge it. You carried it, laid it at my feet, I treated it as equal to you, and you loved it as a wife, and doted on it. It means a strong partner shall come to you. He will be the most powerful in strength of arms in the land. His strength will be as great as that of a sky bolt of Anu. You will love him as a wife, you will dote upon him, and he will always keep you safe. That is the meaning of your dream. Gilgamesh spoke to her, to his mother. Mother, I have had a second dream. An axe was thrown down in the street of Uruk. The sheepfold gathered over it, the countrymen of Uruk stood over it. The land gathered together over it, the men massed over it. I carried it, laid it at your feet. I loved it as a wife, doted upon it, and you treated it as equal to me. The wise cow Ninsen, all-knowing, overstood, she spoke to Gilgamesh, the copper axe which you saw as a man. You will love it as a wife, you will dote upon it, and I shall treat it as equal to you. A strong partner will come to you, one who saves the life of a comrade. He will be the most powerful in strength of arms in the land. His strength will be as great as that of a sky bolt of Anu. Gilgamesh spoke to his mother, let it fall, then, according to the word of Enlil, great counselor. I shall gain a friend to advise me. Ninsen retold his dreams. Thus, Shamhat heard the dreams of Gilgamesh and told them to Enkidu. The dream means that you will love one another. Enkidu was seated before her in Tiranu full of tears, for he trusted Mulatu, who was Ninlil. Why was he betrayed? They were consulting together by themselves, anger at his decision about what to do, who overstood in his heart the truth, which Shamhat spoke of one garment which is clean. She held him by the hand, and like Allahum who ruled, he bowed, though he was the most powerful in strength of arms in the land. His strength was as great as that of a sky bolt of Anu, and built as sturdy as battlements. The wild cow Ninsen, mother of Gilgamesh, spoke to Gilgamesh, my son. Bitterly he was weeping, seized by pain he brought up to his door his weary body. Bitterly he was weeping from hurt, Enkidu had no garment. His hair is allowed to hang loose as a beast. He was born in open country, and who can prevail over him? Enkidu stood, listened to him speaking, pondered, and then sat down, and began to cry. His eyes grew dim with tears. His arms slackened, his strength gone, then they grasped one another and embraced and held each other's hands. Gilgamesh made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Enkidu, why are your eyes filled with tears? Enlil has destined him to keep the pine forest safe, to be the terror of people. Humbaba, whose shout is the flood weapon, whose utterance is fire, and whose breath is death, can hear for a distance of 60 leagues through the field of the forest, so who can penetrate his forest? Debility would seize anyone who penetrated his forest. Gilgamesh spoke to him, to Enkidu, are you saying that you know the way? Gilgamesh made his voice heard and spoke to Enkidu, my friend, are they not here? Are there no children there? Enkidu made his voice heard and spoke to Gilgamesh, my friend, were we to go to him, out there Humbaba is waiting. Gilgamesh made his voice heard and spoke to Enkidu, my friend, we really should prepare. They sat and pondered on things. We made a Hassanu axe, a Pusu axe with a whole talent of bronze for each half of talent, their swords weighed a whole talent each, their belts weighed a whole talent each. Listen to me, young men of Uruk who know the way, I am adamant. I shall take the road to Humbaba. I shall face unknown opposition, I shall ride along an unknown road. Give me your blessing, since I have decided on the course, that I may enter the city gate of Uruk again in future times and celebrate the New Year festival once again in future years, and take part in the New Year festival in years to come. Let the New Year festival be performed, let joy resound, let Uluru cries ring out in the sight of all. Enkidu gave advice to the elders. The young men of Uruk said, tell him not to go to the pine forest, that journey is not to be undertaken. A man must know the way. The guardian of the pine forest knows the great counselors of Uruk, and rose up and gave an opinion to Gilgamesh. You are still young, Gilgamesh, you are impetuous too, but you do not know what you will find out there. Humbaba, who is known as Hoawa and Tarnush, whose shout is the flood weapon, whose utterance is fire and whose breath is death, can hear. For up to 60 leagues through the deep forests. Whoever goes down to his forest 1 or 2, who, even among the Agigi, can face him? Enlil destined him to keep the pine forest safe, to be the terror of people. Gilgamesh listened to the speech of the great counselors. Do not trust entirely, Gilgamesh, in your own strength. When you have looked long enough, trust to your first blow. He who leads the way will save his comrade. He who knows the paths, he will guide and guard his friend. Let Enkidu go in front of you, he knows the way of the pine forest. He can look at the fight and instruct in the battle. Let Enkidu guard the friend, keep the comrade safe, bring him back safe in person for brides, so that we in our assembly may rely on you as ruler, and that you in turn as ruler may rely on us again. Gilgamesh made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Enkidu, "Come my friend, let us go to the great palace, to Ninsin, the great queen." Gilgamesh rose up and entered into the city. "Ninsin, I am adamant. I shall take the distant path to where Humbaba lives. I shall face unknown opposition. I shall ride along an unknown road until the day when, having traveled far and wide, I finally reach the pine forest, until I slay ferocious Humbaba, and exterminate him from the land. Something evil came into your presence." Ninsin paid attention to all the words of Gilgamesh, her son. "Now, your offspring shall be dedicated to Shamash came with the oblates of Gilgamesh. Priestesses, devotees, and votaresses. It has put an obligation on Enkidu's shoulders. He Enkidu has taken a wife from the Al-Ahum. And he shall bring up daughters of Al-Ahum. Ayan and Enkidu he took to the city. Enkidu addressed his words to Ninsin and made his voice heard. Gilgamesh is going to the pine forest, whether a month, week or day, whether a year, month or day. Let Enkidu guard the friend, keep the comrade safe. Let him bring him back safe in person for brides, so that we in our assembly may rely on you as ruler, and that you in turn as ruler can rely on us again." Enkidu made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Gilgamesh, "My friend, turn back from the pine forest, a journey that is not needed." Ninsin entered her chamber at the soap plant. She put on a garment of a queen, adornment of her body. She put on toggle pins and wore her crown on her head. Then she went up onto the roof. She came before Shamash, made a smoke offering, made a Surkanu offering before Shamash and raised her arms. "Why did you single out my son Gilgamesh and impose a restless spirit on him? Now you have affected him and he will take the distant path to where Humbaba lives. He faces an unknown struggle. He will ride along an unknown road. Until the day when, having traveled far and wide, he finally reached the pine forest, until he slays ferocious Humbaba, and exterminates from the land something evil which you hate. On the day when you are at the side of Aya, may Aya, the daughter-in-law, not be too fearful of you to commend him to you. Entrust him to the shadow hour watchman, hold the whip of Gilgamesh, for he extinguished the smoke offering and blood offering." He called Enkidu to him and gave his decision. "Enkidu, you are a strong man, though not from the same womb as I." At 20 leagues they ate their ration. At 30 leagues they stopped for the shadow hour. 50 leagues they traveled during the day. The distance took from the new moon to the full Lebanon. There they dug a pit in front of Shamash. They refilled their water skins to the brim. Gilgamesh went up onto the mountain, and made his flower offering to Shamash. "O mountain, bring me a dream, a favorable one." Enkidu arranged it to be for him, for Gilgamesh. A dust devil passed by. He made him lie down inside the circle and wait. Just like wild barley, he wanted blood. Gilgamesh sat with his chin on his knees. Sleep, which spills out over people, overcame him. In the middle watch he finished his sleep. He rose up and said to his friend, "My friend, didn't you call me? Then why am I awake? Didn't you touch me? Why am I so upset? Didn't an Al-Ahum pass by? Then why is my flesh so feeble? My friend, I had a dream about this very thing. And the dream that I had was extremely upsetting. At the foot of the mountain I sat, a great rock fell and hit me. We were like flies scattered. He who was born in open country," and Enkidu explained the dream to his friend. "My friend, your dream is favorable. The dream is very significant, my friend. The mountain which you saw as a sign means, we shall seize Humbaba, slay him, and cast his corpse onto waste ground. At the light of dawn we shall hear the favorable word of Shamash. At 20 leagues they are their ration. At 30 leagues they stopped for the shadow hour. There they dug a pit in front of Shamash. My friend, this is the explanation of your dream that you dreamt. Humbaba like a great beast fell, and his star fell, and he is no more. His power is finished, until flared up again by his seed. We shall place on top of him a seal. We were furious at the evils of Humbaba, the great beast called Tarnush. We stood over him. And in the daylight hour the word of Shamash was favorable. Heaven cried out, earth groaned. Day grew silent, darkness emerged, lightning flashed, fire broke out. Flames crackled, death rained down. Then the coals which kept falling turned to embers. Let us go back down to open country where we can get advice. Enkidu listened, and made him accept his dream. He spoke to Gilgamesh. Alone they cannot do this, they are strangers, they don't know. It is a slippery path, and one does not travel alone, but two or more than two can. A three-stranded cord is hardest to break, it must be used. A strong lion cannot prevail over it, even to save two of its own cubs. Enkidu made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Gilgamesh, how can I go down into pine forest, or open up the path, when my arms are paralyzed? Gilgamesh made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Enkidu, why, my friend, experienced in conflict, who has won battle, You shall have a double mantle of radiance like the great Anunnaki. Your shout shall be as loud as a kettle drum. Paralysis shall leave your arms, and impotence shall leave your loins. Hold my hand, my friend, let us set off. Your heart shall soon bum in delight for conflict. Forget death and think only of life and success. Man is strong, prepared to fight, responsible. He who goes in front and guards his friend's body, shall keep the comrade safe. They shall have established fame for their future. So in time they arrived together. Enforcers of their words, they stood. They stood and admired pine forest. Gazed and gazed at the height of the pines, gazed and gazed at the entrance to the pines, where Humbaba made tracks as he went to and fro. The paths were well trodden and the road was excellent. They beheld the pine mountain, dwelling place of the Anunnaki, shrine of Urnini. The pines held up their luxuriance even on the face of the mountain. Their shade was good, filling one with happiness. Undergrowth burgeoned, entangling the forest. Humbaba made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Gilgamesh, "The fool Gilgamesh and Enkidu brutish man ought to ask themselves, why have you come to see me? Your friend Enkidu is small fry who does not know his own father. You are so very small that I regard you as I do a turtle or a tortoise, which does not suck its mother's milk, so I do not approach you. Even if I were to kill you, would I satisfy my stomach? Why, oh, Gilgamesh, have you let him reach me? So I shall bite through his windpipe and neck, Gilgamesh, and leave his body for birds of the forest, roaring lions, birds of prey and scavengers." Gilgamesh made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Enkidu, "My friend, Humbaba has changed his mood, and fear has come upon him. And my heart trembles lest he change suddenly." Enkidu made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Gilgamesh, "My friend, why do you talk like a coward? And your speech was feeble? And you tried to hide? Now, my friend, he has drawn you out. With the blowpipe of the coppersmith for heating will he deal with you. To count back each league swollen once with the heat of a dry day you will feel each league of cold, to dispatch the flood weapon, to lash with a whip. Don't retrace your footsteps. Don't turn back. Make your blows harder." Gilgamesh's tears flowed before Shamash. "Remember what you said in Uruk. Stand there and listen to me." Shamash heard the words of Gilgamesh, scion of Uruk, and said, as soon as a loud voice from the sky calls down to him, "Rush, stand up to him, let him not enter the forest, let him not go down to the wood. Humbaba will not be clothed in 7 cloaks, he will be wearing only 1. 6 are taken off of him. Like a charging wild bull which pierces any in its way. He shouts only once, but fills one with terror. The guardian of the forests will shout only once. Humbaba like a bull will shout." As soon as the swords were removed from the sheaths streaked with verdigris, and the dagger, sword, Humbaba made his voice heard and spoke to them saying, "He will not go, may Enlil bless me." He struck his head, and matched him. They stirred up the ground with the heels of their feet. Sirara and Lebanon were split apart at their gyrations, white clouds grew black. Death dropped down over them like a fog. Shamash summoned up great tempests against Humbaba, south wind, north wind, east wind, west wind, moaning wind, gale, Saparzik wind, Evilu wind, Asaku wind, wintry wind, tempest, whirlwind. 13 winds rose up at him and Humbaba's face grew dark. He could not charge forwards, he could not go run backwards. Thus, the weapons of Gilgamesh succeeded against Humbaba. Humbaba gasped for breath. He addressed Gilgamesh. "You are young, Gilgamesh, your mother gave birth to you, and you are the offspring of Ninsun. You rose up at the command of Shamash, ruler of the mountain. And you are the scion of Uruk, ruler Gilgamesh. O Gilgamesh, my friend Gilgamesh, I shall make them grow luxuriantly for you in your sight, as many trees as you wish. I shall keep for you myrtle wood, timbers to be the pride of your palace in Uruk." Enkidu made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Gilgamesh, "My friend, don't listen to the words of Humbaba. You have found out the nature of my forest, the nature of my dwelling, and now you know all their natures. I should have taken you and slain you at the entrance to my forest's growth. I should have given your flesh to be eaten by the birds of the forest, roaring lions, birds of prey, and scavengers. But now, Enkidu, it is in your power to release me. So tell Gilgamesh to spare my life." Enkidu made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Gilgamesh, "My friend, finish him off, slay him, grind him up, that I may survive, Humbaba, the guardian of the pine forest. Do it before the leader Enlil hears about it. Lest the Anunnaki will be filled with fury at us." Enlil and Nippur, Shamash and Sippar, set up an eternal memorial to tell how Gilgamesh slew Humbaba. Humbaba listened and said, "You sit like a shepherd. Now, Enkidu, thus settle in your own release. And tell Gilgamesh that he may save his life. Neither one of them shall outlive his friend Gilgamesh, and Enkidu shall never become old men. Enkidu made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Gilgamesh, "My friend, I talk to you, but you don't listen to me." Their dark patch of verdigris, Gilgamesh was cutting down the trees. Enkidu kept tugging at the stumps. Enkidu made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Gilgamesh, "My friend, I have had a fully mature pine cut down, the crown of which butted against the sky. I made a door 6 poles high and 2 poles wide. Its doorpost is a cubit feet, its lower and upper hinges are made from a single. Let the Faratu, Euphrates carry it to Nippur." They tied together a raft, they put it down, and Enkidu embarked on it, and Gilgamesh took the head of Humbaba. He washed his filthy hair, he cleaned his gear, shook out his locks over his back, threw away his dirty clothes, and put on fresh ones. He clothed himself in robes and tied on a sash. Gilgamesh put his crown on his head. And Ishtar, the princess, raised her eyes to the beauty of Gilgamesh. "Come to me, Gilgamesh, and be my lover. Bestow on me the gift of your fruit. You can be my husband, and I can be your wife. I shall have a chariot of lapis lazuli and gold harnessed for you, with wheels of gold, and horns of elmeshu stone. You shall harness Umu demons as great mules. Enter into our house through the fragrance of pine. When you enter our house, the wonderfully wrought threshold shall kiss your feet. Rulers, nobles, princes shall bow down beneath you. The verdure of mountain and country shall bring you produce. Your goats shall bear triplets, your ewes twins, your loaded donkey shall outpace the mule. Your horses shall run proud at the chariot, your ox shall be unrivaled at the yoke." Gilgamesh made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Ishtar, the princess, "What could I give you if I possessed you? I would give you body oil and garments. I would give you food and sustenance. Could I provide you with bread fit for an alahum? Could I provide you with ale fit for rulers? Could I heap up a robe? If I possess you, you would be like ice, a drafty door that can't keep out winds and gusts, a palace that rejects its own warriors, an elephant which its covering bitumen which stains its carrier, a waterskin which soaks its carrier, a juggernaut which smashes a stone wall, a battering ram which destroys war, a shoe which bites into the foot of its wearer. Which of your lovers lasted forever? Which of your masterful paramours went to heaven? Come, let me describe all your lovers to you. He of the sheep knew him. For Damuzi, the lover of your youth, you decreed that he should keep weeping year after year. You love the colorful Alu bird, but you hit him and broke his wing. He stays in the woods crying, "My wing." You love the lion, whose strength is complete, but you dug 7 and 7 pits for him. You love the horse, so trustworthy in battle, but you decreed the whip, goad, and lash for him. You decreed that he should gallop 7 leagues non-stop. You decreed that he should be overwrought and thirsty. You decreed that endless weeping for his mother Scylla. You loved the shepherd, herdsman, and chief shepherd, who was always heaping up the glowing ashes for thou, and cooked you lambs for you every day. But you hid him and turned him into a wolf. His own herd boys hunts him down, and his dogs tear at his haunches. You loved Ishulianu, your father's gardener, who was always bringing you baskets of dates. They brightened your table every day. You lifted your eyes to him and went to him. "My own Ishulianu, let us enjoy your strength, so put your hand and touch our vulva." But Ishulianu said to you, "What do you want of me? Did my mother not bake for me, and did I not eat? What I eat with you would be loaves of dishonor and disgrace. Rushes would be my only covering against the cold." You listened as he said this, and you hid him, turned him into a frog, left him to stay amid the fruits of his labors. But the pole goes up no more, his bucket goes down no more. And how about me? You will love me and then treat me just like them. When Ishtar heard this, Ishtar was furious, and went up to heaven. Ishtar went up and wept before her father, and her tears flowed before her mother and too. "Father, Gilgamesh, hast shamed me again and again." Gilgamesh spelt out to me, my dishonor and my disgrace. And made his voice heard and spoke. He said to the princess Ishtar, "Why didn't you accuse Gilgamesh the ruler for yourself, since Gilgamesh spelt out your dishonor and your disgrace?" Ishtar made her voice heard and spoke. She said to her father, "Father, please give me the bull of heaven, and let me strike Gilgamesh down. Let me capture Gilgamesh in his dwelling. If you don't give me the bull of heaven, I shall strike Gilgamesh. I shall set my face towards the infernal regions, I shall raise up the dead, and they will eat the living, I shall make the dead outnumber the living." And made his voice heard and spoke. He said to the princess Ishtar, "On no account should you request the bull of heaven from me. There would be 7 years of chaff in the land of Uruk, you would gather chalk instead of gems, you would raise grass." Ishtar made her voice heard and spoke. She said to her father, "I have heaped up a store of grain in Uruk, I have ensured the production of the years of chaff has been gathered." And listened to Ishtar speaking, and he put the bull of heaven's reins in her hands. Ishtar took hold and directed it. When it arrived in the land of Uruk, it went down to the 7 rivers. At the snorting of the bull of heaven a chasm opened up, and 100 young men of Uruk fell into it, 200 young men, 300 young men. At its second snorting another chasm opened up, and another 100 young men of Uruk fell into it, 200 young men, 300 young men fell into it. At its third snorting a chasm opened up, and Enkidu fell into it. But Enkidu leapt out. He seized the bull of heaven by the horns. The bull of heaven blew spittle into his face, with its thick tail it whipped up its tongue. Enkidu made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Gilgamesh, "My friend, we were too arrogant when we killed Humbaba. How can we give recompense for our action?" In between the base of the horns and the neck tendons, Enkidu spun round to the bull of heaven, and seized it by its thick tail, and then Gilgamesh, like a butcher, heroic and brave, plunged his sword in between the base of the horns and the neck tendons. When they had struck the bull of heaven they pulled out its innards, set them before Shamash, backed away and prostrated themselves before Shamash. Then the 2 brothers sat down. Ishtar went up onto the wall of Uruk, the sheepfold. She was contorted with rage. She hurled down curses, "That man Gilgamesh who reviled me, has killed the bull of heaven." Enkidu listened to Ishtar saying this, and he pulled out the bull of heaven's shoulder and slapped it into her face. "If I could only get at you as that does, I would do the same to you myself. I would hang its intestines on your arms." Ishtar gathered the crimped courtesans, prostitutes and harlots. She arranged for weeping over the bull of heaven's shoulder. Gilgamesh called craftsmen, all the armorers, and the craftsmen admired the thickness of its horns. 30 minas of lapis lazuli was needed for each of their pouring ends. 2 minas of gold was needed for each of their sheathings. 6 score of oil was the capacity of both. He dedicated them for anointing his god. Lugalbanda took them in and hung them on his bed where he slept as head of the family. In the Furat-U, Euphrates they washed their hands and held hands and came, riding through the main street of Uruk. The people of Uruk gathered and gazed at them. Who is finest among the young men? Who is proudest among the males? Gilgamesh is the finest among the young men. Gilgamesh is finest among the males. We knew in our anger there is nobody like him who can please her. Gilgamesh made merry in his palace. Then they lay down. The young men were lying in bed for the shadow hour, and Enkidu lay down and had a dream. Enkidu got up and described the dream. He said to his friend, "My friend, why are the great Anunnaki consulting together?" Then daylight came and Enkidu said to Gilgamesh, "Oh my brother, what a dream I saw last shadow hour." Anu, Enlil and Enki and heavenly Shamash were in the assembly. And Anu said to Enlil, "As they have slain the bull of heaven, so too they have slain Humbaba, who guarded the mountains planted with pines." And Anu said, "One of them must die." Enlil replied, "Let Enkidu die, but let Gilgamesh not die." Then heavenly Shamash said to valiant Enlil, "Was it not according to your word that they slew the bull of heaven and Humbaba? Should now innocent Enkidu die?" But Enlil turned in anger to heavenly Shamash, saying, "The fact is, you accompanied them daily, like one of their comrades." Enkidu lay down before Gilgamesh, his tears flowing like streams. "Oh my brother is so dear to me. But they are taking me from my brother. And I shall sit among the dead. Never again shall I see my dear brother with my own eyes." Enkidu made his voice heard and spoke. He said to his friend Gilgamesh, "Come in the door." Enkidu lifted up his face. He discussed with the door, "Door, don't you remember the words? I selected the timber for you over 20 leagues, until I had found a fully mature pine. There is no other wood like yours. Your height is 6 poles, your width 2 poles, your doorpost, your lower and upper hinge are made from a single tree. I made you, I carried you to Nippur. Be aware, door, that this was a favor to you, and this was a good deed done for you. I myself raised the axe, I cut you down, loaded you myself onto the raft, I myself put you in temple of Shamash, I myself set you in his gate. I myself set you in Uruk. Now, door, it was I who made you, I who carried you to Nippur. But the ruler who shall arise after me shall go through you. Gilgamesh shall go through your portals, and change my name and put on his own name." He tore out the door and hurled. He kept listening to his words. Straightway, Gilgamesh kept listening to the words of his friend Enkidu, and his tears flowed. Gilgamesh made his voice heard and spoke. He said to Enkidu, "You, who used to be reasonable, the dream was very precious, and the warning awful.